Paul Skenes of the Pirates, of course, has been the front runner for quite some time, but his odds have dramatically shifted. I believe now he's only minus 150 to win the award, and it's
Hmm.
Jackson Merrill of the Padres who's coming on strong. I know there have been people kind of leading the charge for Jackson Merrill out on the West Coast, but I have to admit, like, I haven't watched a ton of the games. I can see the stats, but I think the discussion also boils down to this. If you have a position player and a starting pitcher who are
Yeah.
equally as good at their position, who do you think is more important?
Well, I think it's the pitcher, right? Don't you?
Same,
If you're comparing
I
a
think.
pitcher versus a position player, because a pitcher can dominate a game and shut down an entire lineup and control a game. A pitcher has more significant control over the game than a position player does. And also, perception matters here, and there is something to be said. Not that it's necessarily fair about if you're talking about a pitcher and especially a guy who has such an interesting and effective repertoire like Paul Skeens, striking guys out. He's an intimidating figure. He has this sort of aura about him. And of course, the reputation coming in from LSU. He has all of that going for him. And it's not as sexy for Jackson Merrill getting hits and playing some decent defense. The highlights just they don't match up. And again, that's not fair, but I think perception certainly matters in a race like this.
I think if Jackson Merrill maybe had more home runs, it would be a different discussion because
Hmm.
I do think you need some sort of sexy stat. Because what I was thinking of was okay, if we are talking about the top players in all of baseball at their position, I think you put Paul Skeens right up there. The guy started the All Star game for crying out loud. I feel like he has already broken the inner circle of some of the best pitchers in all of baseball. When it comes to Jackson Merrill, he has been doing great things for the Padres. And of course, the Padres, one of the hottest teams in baseball. He is probably a part of that, with some of these clutch hits, but he's hitting 289 and he only has 17 home runs. So you could probably make a case for saying Paul Skeens is at least in the same breath as some of the Cy Young candidates for the National League. I don't think you could say that about Jackson Merrill as far as the MVPs go.
Yeah.
Are you really putting him in the same breath as Otani? And maybe that's
No.
not fair because Otani's not in the same breath as just about anybody. But even looking across the way at the American League, like, is Jackson Merrill in the same breath as Aaron Judge, Juan Soto? No,
No.
simply because he doesn't have the power.
No, I totally agree. So I think you look at that as well. And ultimately, I think Skeens is going to win this thing. And also, this is one of those situations where Skeens, whenever he takes them out, and he was supposed to take them out today, and now he's not. But whenever he does, I mean, it's must-watch TV, right? You always want to
Mm-hmm.
find out what he's doing. And all he needs is one or two more dominant outings, and I think those odds shift again, and he's more of a minus money favorite because if Jackson Merrill has a two-hit game, are you going to pay that much attention? You probably should. But if Paul Skeens goes out and pitches 7 shutout innings and strikes out 8 or 9, people are going to go, oh, man, incredible. So that will factor into it as well.
Yeah, and the other point that you brought up I thought was a good one because even on a bad team, a good starting pitcher will give your team a shot. Like,
Hmm.
look at the games in which Garrett Crochet pitches. He actually gives the White Sox a fighting chance in games as opposed to position players. Like, look at how many times the Angels had MVP candidates and MVP winners, and yet they don't even make the postseason. Like
Yeah.
Otani, Mike Trout, I just think it goes to show that no matter how good you are as a position player, I don't think you bring the same effect as you do as a starting pitcher. Although it's only every 5 days when it comes to starting pitcher. So it's a debate that rages on, and the odds board certainly has shifted. I didn't realize that Jackson Merrill is minus 110. It
Yeah.
feels like you shouldn't take him as the second favorite at minus 110. Like, do these odds seem odd to you?
Yes, I agree. If I'm going to take Jackson Merrill, shouldn't you get some plus money for that? Seriously.
Yeah.
If Paul Skeens is minus 145, I'm not taking. I'd rather lay a buck 45 with Paul Skeens than lay minus 110 with Jackson Merrill. That seems way off.